Did you know that Virginia is the birthplace of American whiskey? Well, they've been making it there since 1607, and Catoctin Creek has been honoring that tradition of small craft rye whiskey since 2009. Virginia grain, Virginia water, and Virginia barrels. Catoctin Creek, the Virginia rye whiskey. This is brought to you by Smooth Ambler, a proud member of the Bourbon Pursuit family. Smooth Ambler builds on the traditional roots of American whiskey through innovative blends, proudly sourced whiskeys, and a unique line of their own homemade bourbon and rye recipes made in West Virginia. So venture off the traditional trail and go see them in Maxwellton, West Virginia. They'd love to welcome you to the family that they're building around their whiskey. Wilderness Trail is sweet mash Kentucky straight bourbon and rye whiskey, made by master distiller Shane Baker and fermentation expert Dr. Pat Heist. Whether it is high rye or wheated, cask strength or bottled in bond, Wilderness Trail is always non-chill filtered premium whiskey with unparalleled flavor. Distilled, aged, and bottled in Danville, Kentucky. It's like, I don't know if I want to try it, but I kind of want to try it.
Kind of see how bad it is.
Yeah.
Always, you tell me something's bad, I'm like, I got to try it.
This is Bourbon Pursuit, the official podcast of bourbon, bringing to you the best in news, reviews, and interviews with people making the bourbon whiskey industry happen. And I'm one of your hosts, Kenny Coleman. We've taken a little bit of a hiatus from the Bourbon Community Roundtable, but we're back and we've got two topics that are hot. A few months ago, Buffalo Trace announced there would be no George T Stagg in the 2021 release of the Antique Collection. Many theories started circulating, such as holding it back to create a media frenzy, or potentially having a new brand come from it years from now. However, Buffalo Trace has gone on record saying it didn't reach the standard that they'd come to expect from it, yet they knew about this months prior. We're going to analyze this from both sides of the fence here. And in the second half of the show, we look at the sheer volume of brands that are built on MGP and how some have hype and others are still trying to find their way. With that, enjoy this week's episode, and now here's Fred Minnick with Above the Char.
I'm Fred Minnick, and this is Above the Char. This week's idea comes from Todd Van Orman, who writes me on fredminnick.com. Why, from a marketing standpoint, would an already household name of bourbon sponsor such controversial figures as Joe Rogan to advertise their bourbon? They already can't keep up with demand for flagship. Why risk making it more scarce, or maybe the opposite? Push people away like me. Keep up the great work. Thank you in advance. Well, thank you, Todd. Todd, you have definitely asked a great question. I've been in a lot of rooms with in my time in co-creating bourbon and beyond. I got the opportunity to be in rooms with marketing geniuses, and I know what it takes to get someone to come here from Alaska or the Philippines to watch a concert in Louisville, Kentucky. And it's very similar to what it would take to get someone to buy a bottle of bourbon, and that it's just marketing. It's an effort to reach across someone in a grocery store aisle, in a liquor store aisle, on a website, and get them to buy a particular product over something else. And of course, here we're talking about Buffalo Trace. Buffalo Trace sponsors the Joe Rogan podcast. And, the sad truth is they have the numbers. They're going to know the numbers of who they could lose, like yourself, Todd, and who they can gain, which are the fanatics of a show. So when you see someone take a calculated risk in any kind of marketing endeavor, they know. They know. Let's face it, Buffalo Trace on the Joe Rogan show is far more effective than them buying ads in a newspaper, a whiskey-related publication, even Google-related ads. I mean, Joe Rogan is the king of podcasting, which is where this right here lives. And that is a risk that they have taken, and it's a risk that they will probably continue to take because he has massive, massive numbers. And you've got him on there saying that this is his bourbon. This is his exclusive bourbon. And that's a big deal. That's a big, big deal. I mean, to put it in equivalency, like if Bourbon and Beyond could have that look from Bob and Tom, the Bob and Tom show, I mean, we'd probably be all over it. But these shows don't just do that. And I can speak from experience. I've been asked to endorse a lot of products that are not whiskey related, and I choose not to because I don't believe in them. So when you hear, a famous person or a famous host endorse something, it usually means they believe in it most of the time. Some people don't, but most do. So I think that's what you're seeing here. They've done the numbers, and it's a risk they're willing to take. Whether you believe in Joe Rogan or not, that's the pony they are backing. But that's going to do it for this week's Above the Char. If you want to be like Todd and ask me a question that is actually really thought-provoking, hit me up on fredminnick.com. That's fredminnick.com. Click the contact button and just shoot me your idea. If I like it, I'll read it on the air. Until next week, cheers.
We've blended whiskey before, so we know that it takes time and skill. And the team at Barrel Craft Spirits, they don't stop until they get it right. Learn more at barrelbourbon.com. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Bourbon Community Roundtable, number 62. And we've got most of the gang here with us tonight as we start covering some things that have happened to news of the past, probably like month and 2 months ago. But we've been taking a little bit of hiatus. We had some scheduling issues on our side. There's a little bit of chaos on the back end over here, but we're now here. We're going to start moving forward. We got some really good topics lined up tonight. But Ryan, it's good to see you again. I feel like we've talked to each other every day now for the past month, like an old married couple.
Yeah, it's like every night, 9 o'clock podcast. It's like just as soon as I get like ready to go to bed, it's like, nope, got to go to work. So, but I'm glad we've had a lot of good conversations, and tonight's going to be another good one.
Well, I tell you what, even with the time change, I'm sitting there thinking maybe we should move this up to an hour to 8 because I'm sitting here like getting tired and it's really dark. It's cold, and I'm trying to muster up all the energy to keep this sucker going.
Yeah, when it's like 6 and pitch black out, and you're like, gosh, I feel like it's like 10, and I still got 4 more hours. Like, what do I do with my time? But
I'm with you.
Sometimes with the kids, I'm like, all right, kids, time to go to bed. They're like, Dad, it's 5:30. I'm like, okay, well, you got a few more hours. It's later than I thought, or earlier than I thought it was.
Go watch another round of shows. What do you think?
For sure. All right. Well, you just heard Blake from Sealbox and Bourbon right there. And then Jordan, I'll let you do a quick little intro, and then Brian, you go next.
Sure. This is Jordan, one of the 3 guys from Breaking Bourbon. You can find us at breakingbourbon.com, your source for all things bourbon and whiskey reviews.
And I'm Brian with Sippin' Corn. Find me at Sippin' Corn or bourbonjustice.com. Thanks for having me on number 62.
Here we go. All right. So the big news I guess it was big news a few weeks ago, maybe 2 months ago, was that Antique Collection was missing a heavy hitter this year, and that was George T Stagg. Now, we had our own little Twitter message thread. We had text message threads kind of talking about this, but I will read something from the press release to sort of refresh everybody's memory here. And they said that they didn't want to release it because the 15-year-old barrels did not meet the distillery's taste standards for the Stagg brand. There's various measures of quality tests administered to all of Buffalo Trace's bourbon, everything from checking turbidity and testing samples using gas chromatography. But the most discriminating test of all is the human palate. A team of taste testers who have gone through the sensory analysis training, tasting each barrel sample brought to the laboratory at Buffalo Trace, ensure that each barrel matches the brand standards before it is done to be bottled. However, if one taster disagrees, the entire barrel is sent back to be aged longer. Now, we kind of saw this transpire. We had our own threads going on. We saw a lot of the outbreak and hysteria that was going through a lot of the forums. I kind of want to turn it over to you all first. What was your initial reaction when you saw this?
Suspicion.
I roll. Are we all just doing one word?
Yeah, if you can,
One
you can
word,
sum it up
Rick.
in 3 words or less, that'd be great.
Yeah.
It's going to be a real short round table. We're all just going to give 3-word answers to everything.
Dubious.
Guys,
I mean,
that's great.
I'll jump in. I'll say, kind of to piggyback on Brian's suspicion comment. I was just like, there is no way you're telling me with the amount of barrels that they have aging and the amount of barrels that are going into Stag that they couldn't have some kind of release. And then I think that suspicion was raised even more whenever recently they had TTB approval for the Stag Junior losing the Junior. And so, I know Buffalo Trace has an incredible tasting team, but there is no way you can convince me that there wasn't enough barrels to find a Stag release. I think there's going to be, more Double Eagle in the pipeline or a Stag. I don't even know what that would be, a Double Stag or whatever. I feel like there's a whole lot more to it. The fact that they're throwing out in the press release, the chromatography and all that just makes me think that it was covering up some future plans and they needed those barrels for other releases because at the end of the day, Buffalo Trace sells those bottles to a distributor for about $50 a piece, maybe $60. And we all know they could be getting a whole lot more for that bourbon. So that's my uneducated, that's not, behind the scenes take, but that's how I took it.
I mean, we gave them the benefit of the doubt based on what they said, but really when you look at it, it was, like I said, we're a little dubious. So for the first time ever, too, Buffalo Trace got ahead of everything and put this out in the New York Times. So we're reading this in the New York Times before it really hits, and they sent out their own press release to all of us. So they got ahead of it. They definitely got the publicity they wanted. More people are talking about BTAC than ever. And we said the same thing. Out of all the barrels that they had, that they're tasting year over year just to make sure they're progressing good. Last year they were on track, and all of a sudden this year they were off track, or have they been off track the whole time and they just weren't going to say anything? So it's a little suspicious, especially with what Blake said too about Stag Junior dropping the Junior. It just feels a little off. I mean, they've done very low BTAC bottle count releases before with the various brands, right? So it seems weird. They couldn't even find like 600, right? A few barrels to mix up 600-700 bottles, even just to keep it going year over year. It's like I said, we gave them the benefit of the doubt. We'll take their word for it. It just felt off a little bit, though.
Yeah, I kind of want to just touch on what Blake was saying earlier about holding these back for potentially something different. I do want to give them the benefit of the doubt. We know everybody at Buffalo Trace. We know Freddie. We know Joshua Steele. We know all these people that they're great people, and we all want to think that yes, they're not going to be part of some massive marketing scheme to go ahead and trick everybody in bourbon to get this massive PR sort of thing out of it. But you do think about, well, I saw a lot of things that were also in the forums when people said, well, it couldn't have been worse than the 2019 release. And I'm thinking to myself, gosh, was it really that bad? I don't really remember it being that bad, but some people said that it was. However, I don't think I've had a Stag that had been that bad. Now, I can say that, or I would say that if they do come out with a name, if they keep holding these back, you got to think, well, what's like a really good Stag, right? I mean, they call them 10-point bucks, right? So you got to like Stag 10-point or something like that. That has to be the name that they're going to come out with at some point. I'm not a hunter, but I'm just guessing that's what it has to be.
It's either something like that, or they're expanding the Taylor line again. They've got that earmarked for something. But the thing that impresses me the most and makes me suspicious at the same time the most is how genius they are at getting PR for something like this. Like to Jordan's point about sending out the press release before getting out of the gate so fast on it. They got more press for saying they're not going to release something than anyone gets for Parker's Heritage. I mean, come on, really? By saying they're not going to release something? They're absolute geniuses at marketing, and they make us and everyone else do their marketing for them.
I would say that the other thing that also felt a little premeditated, especially when you saw it on the New York Times that blows out the news. What was it, 3 or 4 hours before the rest of us got the press release?
Yep.
And when you want to come out and you want to be a little forthright and you say, this isn't a PR stunt, it feels a little like a PR stunt. It feels a little like you knew what you were doing. Like, how can we make the biggest splash out of bad news? And I felt that was the only thing that felt pretty targeted in actually putting it to the New York Times first.
I feel like that's the same thing, though. You could look at it from the other side of if they just threw it out there with no context or anything. I get that they're trying to get ahead of it. And what bourbon brand these days doesn't want to be in the New York Times, Robert Simonson writing about it? So if, they can, I don't know, that part, I understood that part more than just like what happened to the actual barrels, I feel like. 'Cause they wanted to get ahead of the story. And I saw plenty of comments from people who were like, well, good for them for, standing on their quality. And if it wasn't up to that, they weren't going to put it out. And it's like, well, I guess that opinion's out there and that's what they're going for. So
My favorite part of the New York Times article, though, was they said, like, Drew said, if any one team member gives a thumbs down, then they reject it. And so I love they have their same reviewing system as we do, on the Whiskey Quickies for thumbs up. So,
Very
just,
quickly,
they've been
yeah.
watching.
Yeah.
I got it from you.
What is that middle?
in all honesty, if they thought Stagg missed the mark, I thought William LaRue Weller really missed the mark this year. It's like, how could they? I don't know. I've become such good friends with Josh Steely, and the whole team over there is so good. I don't think this was like intentional, but it is such a damn good PR job. That it's like it's brilliant. And then even if it was, it's kudos to them. It's everything they do. The whiskey they make's great. The PR is great. Everything's great. It's just brilliant, really.
Yeah, there's admiration there.
If they came out and said, hey, guys, we're going to hold back Stagg's release because we want to sell it as a $500 bottle in 2 years, and all of you are still going to buy it, all of us are still going to buy that bottle in 2 years. Like they have that much kind of sway over the market right now. It's pretty impressive. Not to say that that's really what they're going to do, but I feel like they just have, people would be like, well, at least they're honest about, what they're doing and how they make their products. So it's really kind of a win-win for them. But I don't know. Stagg's always my favorite, so I'm probably just mourning not having that this year.
Yeah.
But there's plenty to still drink. So
Right there
Last
with you,
year's
Blake.
was so damn good too. Stagg's last year's one of my favorites in a while. Yeah, I was sad.
So I know Fred had mentioned this in our sort of chat, and I'll kind of give him the credit for saying this, is that, by going to the New York Times, what do you gain by doing that? Well, you gain an audience of people that are probably just relatively into bourbon, but they know the New York Times. And so you're making even more people that might not even know this product exists now know about it and think that they're not going to be able to find it, yet creating even more scarcity for the same exact product. So it's feeding the beast that's already too big and kind of making more people aware about a product that's already pretty damn scarce the way it is. It's not the same thing as Pappy Van Winkle. Everybody knows about Pappy Van Winkle now. Anybody that's even not into bourbon has heard of Pappy Van Winkle, but
Even in the article, they mention the distillery that makes the highly coveted Pappy Van Winkle.
Well, and guys, I didn't want to necessarily say it out loud, but the thought crossed my mind since they mentioned Pappy. Are they trying to make this the next Pappy? And is the Pappy family going somewhere else? Are they driving a harder bargain? And Buffalo Trace is positioning themselves to have a replacement, to have the next Pappy that they have all of this demand for, that they kind of just self-create out of thin air.
ooh, they're not playing checkers anymore, then, are they, Brian?
No, not at all. It's all chess from them.
I was about to say that's quite the interesting take there. I didn't even really think about that.
The conspiracy wheels are turning now.
Well, to play off Brian's point too, though, it might, that's a really good point, Brian. It's also the market since think when Pappy became huge 5-6 years ago. I mean, super mainstream, and since that time, the bourbon market and the bourbon consumer base has just exploded. So I think there's actually room for both. There's room to always have that Pappy hype, and there's room to have hype of another bottle or two that's just as important. And instead of somebody else coming in and swooping into those number 2 and 3 spots, Buffalo Trace is like, we're going to take those too. We'll do the whole antique collection. We'll just start hyping up this thing that people think, and let's start associating with Pappy, and boom, let's have people chase that too.
Yeah, because it was one of those things. kind of the last high-end things that really only bourbon geeks knew about for the past few, well, up until the past few years. But the past few years before then, it was relatively one of those things that everybody knew that was a great product, and you'd pay a little bit extra over retail because it was great. Now it's starting to hit that same exact price point. Now
I'm surprised, the Breaking Bourbon guys didn't see this coming with their evaporation calculations and charts each year.
We pissed somebody off hardcore on that one.
But Jordan, you've probably gotten this feedback from them as well of like you do the math on the how many bottles are available, and they'll say like, no, you're way off. I'm like, well, math isn't off. So either something in the press release is off, or I know I've had that conversation with him. Like, no, your calculation wasn't. I'm like, well, it's pretty easy to do here, guys. Have you run into that some with them?
We have run into the fact that, they told us they're putting out all the information to consumers so that people can't calculate it anymore. So either our math collectively between Breaking Bourbon, you, Blake, and I'm sure others out there was so far off, or they realized, oh, these guys are spot on, we better stop this. So I think it's more the later.
Now, I also think that, or I want to say that people may not realize that Stagg has typically for the past few years been one of the largest bottle counts that's ever been released. What was it in 2019 or 2020? Or last when you'd be able to figure it out, it was close to 40,000 bottles, roughly, something like that.
Yep.
It's pretty substantial release. And even at 50% plus evaporation, actually, it's even way more than that. That's a lot of barrels. That's a lot of barrels. And so that they didn't taste them all. It's understandable they didn't taste them all, but I'm sure they went through different lots and different things like that. I do find it difficult to say that none of these lots cut the mustard, and we couldn't put out even 5,000 bottles. Maybe whatever it is that Sazerac 18 is, or Eagle Rare 17, that's the lowest amount, at least something to kind of put it out there. But you look at that as this is an opportunity to really pump up the media engine and kind of get those going. Now, the other thing that I also want to kind of mention here is that as they were tasting these, it's not like they just did it, a few weeks before the press release. Like this was set in motion 6 months to 9 months ago of actually when it was going to be released, because by the time you go and you harvest the barrels, you get them all together, you do the dumping, you do the blending, you get the bottling, you get it on the skids, you get it out there. It's a 6 to 9 month process. So they've known for a long time that there wasn't going to be a Stagg release. Well, first off, tip of the hat to them. They were able to keep that secret internal.
Secret.
Yeah, very well kept secret.
And they still push back the release of the antique collection. I mean, usually that's like maybe second week of September. And what did it come out this year? Second week of October. So
yeah, it was
that's
real late.
Also a little interesting as well.
Yeah. But I mean, like I said, that's just, you look at that as saying, okay, well, we can either do damage control now and get the word out there, or we just break the internet all one day and we drop a press release, we drop this news, we do everything. Because if you do this, hell, nobody even cares about the William Llewellyn at this point. All the news is talking about Stagg. So they definitely switched it up and did something to make it a little more lively, I guess you could say.
Well, I'm sure you guys maybe saw the same thing that we did too. It seems like the bourbon community, right? The diehard bourbon community, that people are really as into whiskey as we are. They just aren't, the the antique press release this year didn't get as much traction as years past. People kind of shrugged their shoulders and said, all right, yep, another Buffalo Trace product. Not going to be able to find it. If I do, it's going to be overpriced. But everyone who's not into bourbon, right? I have a lot of friends reach out and said, hey, I read this in the New York Times. Did you see this? Like, what's this bourbon? Is it good? So it's almost, the bourbon community is getting kind of tired of not being able to find stuff where everything's overpriced. But now there's this whole slew of new folks that are super into the antique collection more than ever before. And it's not just because the New York Times, it's just because, they don't know any better about prices. So they're okay with that. Oh, it's $300, $400, $500. All right, sounds good. That's what I'm paying for scotch. Sure. Sign me up.
Yeah, and I think we put out our review on it. Was there anything that you all thought on the antique collection that really surprised you, or one that was didn't live up to the hype? I know Ryan and I, we've already discussed on ours. We didn't think the William Llewellyn lived up to it this year. It actually was the worst of the four, in our opinion. But I was honestly really surprised about the Thomas H. Handy. I thought it was an incredible showing this year.
Yep, I will second that. And the Eagle Rare was, I mean, 2 years ago it was incredible. Then it was kind of okay last year, and then this year was really incredible. I thought the Eagle Rare 17 and the Handy. Sorry, Jordan. Proceed.
No, I was going to say Handy's one of those. Handy was good this year. It is. But it's always one of those ones where everyone discounts it because it's easy to find, it's the lowest age and stuff like that. But it's
Easy
like
to find.
well, easy. All right. If you laid out,
Listen to that.
if you laid out, all five Stags out there, if you laid them out in front of folks, most of the time people aren't going to choose Handy, which is a shame because it is a sleeper. Some years it's just really, really good and it keeps getting better. It's had its off years, but yeah, it was good this year.
Well, it will not surprise any listeners to the show that I did yet again have not received samples on this.
I believe Blake's in the same bucket there too.
Yeah, I don't even know
Yeah.
if I can access the Bourbon or email account anymore. So yeah. I'm out in the cold on that one.
All right, so there you go. Don't email Blake about it. But like I said, to kind of wrap up this topic, I do want to reiterate that we do know a lot of people at Buffalo Trace, and I do want to take their word at face value and saying that it really wasn't good enough, and they did try and make it as best as they could. However, let us come to it next time. We'll be your actual, your consumer market, like your actual testing market. Let us be the judge of that, because I don't know. I think it'd be tough to pull one by me. But then again, we're also not master tasters, master blenders, and they get paid for that.
That would be a good tour experience, right? A bad stag. So remember Heaven Hill was doing that for a while. They always have like a bad age bourbon that you would taste on their tour. That'd be great if Buffalo Trace said, hey, come taste a bad stag. I think people would actually seek that out.
It's true.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of reminds you of like the Cork Taint Elmer T. Lee. It's like, I don't know if I want to try it, but I kind of want to try it.
Kind of see how bad it is.
Yeah.
You tell me something's bad, I'm like, I gotta try it.
How bad can it be? Oh, that bad.
Yeah, but I mean, this is the most 2021 thing, like with supply chain issues and everything. It's like, they're like, why not? Let's throw ours in the mix too, where we just don't have a release, but no, it's fun to speculate, and, all this stuff is for fun for us guys. So everyone at Sazerac, we love you and we'll take your word for it. And it's just fun to speculate because you do make damn good whiskey, and now you have even better PR. So good job.
I think, kudos to them for making good of a bad situation, right? Like Kenny said, we'll take them for their word, but man, that's amazing marketing.
They figured it out. It's another Midas touch over there. But we'll go ahead. We'll start moving to our second topic for the night, and that's starting to look at, MGP Brands. They've been growing astronomically now over the past few years. Spirits of French Lick pays tribute to the many distilleries that once dotted the southern hills of Indiana. They focus on using the best practices of those early times in balance with the improved methods of today, delivering the finest handcrafted bottled and bond bourbons to an audience that's eager for an alternative to the big guys. Their distilling philosophy is balance between the distiller's art and the contribution of the barrel, time, and patience to bring you an unparalleled quality and depth of flavor. Spirits of French Lick's motto is simple: respect the grain. You can find all Spirits of French Lick's products and their new releases on sealbox.com. But don't just take Fred Minnick's word for it. Find out for yourself. And check out spiritsoffrenchlick.com and follow them on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Remember to always drink responsibly. Welcome to Total Wine and More, a wonderland for wine, spirits, and beer lovers. No matter what's on your holiday table, they have the bottle and savings to match. And here's their recipe for a toast-worthy feast. Pop open some bubbly as guests gather around. Why not mix up a batch of brown derbies while you're at it? Pair baked ham with Cabernet for some tasty magic. Or shake it up and pour bourbon with your bird. Don't forget to check out their top 20 wines of the year and discover standout gifts for everyone on your list. Plus, there's so many new festive flavors to fall for, like pumpkin brews and cherry vanilla flavored whiskey. But with over 8,000 wines, 4,000 spirits, and 2,500 beers to choose from, you can expect the unexpected, and always at ridiculously low prices. You can explore more in-store, online, or on their app at Total Wine. Spirits not available in Virginia or North Carolina. Heaven Hill Distillery has been lifting America's spirit since 1935. They celebrate American whiskey's rich traditions, guide its evolution, and champion its exciting future. For Heaven Hill, whiskey is more than a profession. It's a personal passion that is poured into every bottle, shared with newcomers and aficionados alike. So whether you enjoy the simple pleasure of Evan Williams Bottled and Bond or savored that uniquely satisfying experience of a rare single barrel bourbon like Elijah Craig 18-year-old, you'll find a home at Heaven Hill. If you want to learn more about the craft and techniques of making quality American whiskey, check out the educational resources and sign up for their newsletter at heavenhilldistillery.com. And Heaven Hill reminds you to think wisely and drink wisely. Cheers. We'll start moving to our second topic for the night, and that's starting to look at, MGP Brands. They've been growing astronomically now over the past few years, and you see some that have really starting to rise as like almost like have this like cult-like following. They have a lot of hype around them, while others are still trying to figure out how to sort of latch on to it, because we've seen that before, and it's a perfectly good playbook. Go and purchase a bunch of aged MGP stock, anywhere from 4 to 6 years old. A few years ago, you could get some that was 10 to 13 years old, and that's sort of all dried up. But for the most part, you see a bunch of brands that are continually on the face of social media and getting attention, and continually being able to sell a lot of their products. So you look at things like Smoke Wagon, Nashville Barrel Company, Brothers Bond, OKI, and Smooth Ambler, I guess, was probably the OG of this sort of scenario. But then you have other brands like Remus and Savage and Cook and maybe Broken Barrel and 200 others that all have the same exact whiskey, but still have not been able to make the same exact dent, or maybe a perceived dent in the marketplace. So I kind of want to throw it first off and talk about just the MGP train in general. Now, we have seen this go over the past few years. That we had, 3-4 years ago, we had these MGP chasers that basically wiped out the 12 plus year stock at a lot of distilleries. That was Smoke Wagon, it was Blom Brothers, and I'm pretty sure there's 2 or 3 others that they were able to just look around and find them and completely wipe them out. Do we think that is what started this big MGP chase train, where people are now realizing the value of MGP and really starting to appreciate its whiskey?
I think a lot of it comes down to when those guys did it, age started becoming really big in the whiskey world and bourbon world. People want a double-digit aged bourbon. And if you're a new startup, there's no way you're doing that anytime soon unless you just go out and scoop it up. And that's Smoke Wagon. Those guys, that's what they started doing. Where else are they going to get double-digit aged state of bourbon for the price that MGP was offering at the time too? So it was a smart move in that sense, to just gobble up as much as they can, so they can buy time if they chose to age their own stuff.
I always look at it as like it is the same, but it's different at the same time. There's good MGP, there's bad MGP. I've had both, and also there's good blending and there's bad blending. What one place does with 10 to 12 barrels of MGP, it a lot of times better than what others do, because they don't understand process and kind of compounding flavors and layering flavors in a blend. But the next thing I think you have is just reaching out to the consumer, making them excited. MGP makes a good product, so if you have a good product and then you have a brand that's reaching out to customers and making people believe in what they're doing, I think that's kind of that next step, and people want to buy into that. I look at Penelope with that, where they're upfront, like, hey, we source MGP, it's 4-5-year MGP, but we think we're going to blend it really well. We're going to try cool and fun experiments, and then we're going to be very interactive with our customer base as well. And ultimately, I think that's what kind of hits home with a lot of bourbon drinkers today. I don't know if any of us, well, maybe some of us, Pursuit and Breaking Bourbon and with Bourbon Justice in the book, or some of the major distilleries are reaching out. But for the average consumer, if they post on Instagram or Twitter, the major guys aren't commenting on them. But then you have like a lot of these like Smoke Wagon, Pinhook, Penelope, Nashville Barrel Company. They may jump on, comment, and do all that. Now, I think that goes a long way as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I was going to throw in another old OG on this, and even before Smooth Ambler, Redemption Rye, before they sold, had some 8 and I think 10-year-old. And the other thing that got people's attention, in addition to the age, was barrel proof. I mean, that's the front end of barrel proof when Redemption came out with that, and then Smooth Ambler following it. And I think that plus the skill you guys are talking about, some people know how to blend it, and they know how to make something better than the whatever that saying is, the parts in the whole. And that's really what's setting people or setting the really good MGPs apart, I think. And that's what people are finally getting to appreciate now that there's so much MGP out there. They can appreciate those older Redemptions and the Smooth Ambler. And Smoke Wagon has kind of caught that same vibe. Then you get some of the other ones, and they're totally passable. So you just got to find the right ones that fit your profile.
I'm still trying to find the difference between all these MGP brands, because I've tried them and tried to understand this. And yes, and all of them are. I mean, some of the MGP bourbon, yes, it's not great, but it's pretty good. I mean, it's all really good whiskey, and it's got a great high rye spice. Especially that high rye mash bill, it hits all the check boxes with bourbon people. The biggest thing is people just like stories and connections. And that's the brands that are exceeding the most of that are able to create a story, create a brand, create connections with their consumers. Like Blake commented, if you post a Smoke Wagon bottle or this and that, I mean, I go through the stories. I'm like, can I get through these fast enough? These Smoke Wagon, there's like 100 reposts of, and people like that. They feel special when you repost, all that. And Aaron's a character. I mean, he's just funny to watch and gives you a behind the scenes look. Nashville Barrel Company's got, some great guys behind it, that you can connect to the brand with them. I think that's, it's like any product, cars are pretty much the same. They're only marginally better, but people like brands, and Mercedes because they're brands, and they feel connected to it. And that's who's capitalizing the most of this. The whiskey's great. I mean, and I don't think there's really a much difference between different brands and the whiskey, but I do think there's a different perceived connection to the brand, and that's what's separating those from each other.
So, Ryan, I'll throw another question at you there then. So if you see brands that are doing this and really all it is a lot of like grassroots marketing at that point, is that a playbook that anybody could follow? I mean, if we wanted to start, let's not even say we, because at least we all have some sort of outreach, but we'll just say anybody that's in the chat wanted to start, whiskey chat whiskey, and it was a bunch of 4 and 6 year old MGP, but all I have to do is just have a really good Instagram account. Is that a recipe for success? I mean, is the whiskey good enough that it passed that you could sell it anywhere just because it's 4 to 6 year old MGP?
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're an authentic person and like you're genuine about your story and your passion about the whiskey, I mean, I think people can sniff out the frauds and who's just kind of trying to cash in on the moment. I feel like the brands that are most successful do really care about the industry and community as a whole. Blake was talking Penelope, Smoke Wagon, we've talked to all those guys. I mean, they're very passionate, people and know what they're doing. And they're, I feel like this is the new wave of whiskey brands. We were talking to Blue Run today, and it's all of us new companies. We're having to source whiskey and use contract distillation, but we're able to kind of make a difference from ourselves, with blending and doing different fun things that you don't get from the big distilleries that have that great mash bill, that's $20 a bottle, but they're, Elijah Craig's been dead and gone for 200 years. He's not reposted my bottle shot, for my family picnic or whatever.
Well, I mean, I don't know. We get a seance together and see what we can do and kind of make them come back to the dead for you, but who knows?
Yeah, but I mean, I think if you're someone passionate about this industry, I mean, MGP is a great product, and it's easy, to work with. So, I mean, yeah, I think anybody could do it if their intentions are right.
I think Mitch's comment that just popped up right there about whiskey fans wanting to feel that connection with the brand is spot on, right? So those, it's not just going out and buying barrels. It's, well, what are we going to do with it? That's why Aaron's done some with Smoke Wagon. The Penelope guys are super engaged with their folks, right? I mean, even you, Kenny and Ryan, with the brand you're building, you're really connected to the community, and you're just not throwing it out there and just walking away. And that's the huge difference, right? It's how are you going to differentiate yourself, not just by blending, not just by barrel finishing, but how are you actually going to connect with that consumer base to build that movement and build that fan base?
Yeah, because I mean, like you all have done picks with, Penelope or whoever, when you go hang out with those guys, it's a great experience, and whereas you go to a distillery, they roll out 3 barrels and are like, how fast can we get your ass out of here? But you go to these other places and they embrace you, and it's a whiskey geek's dream. It's like going to Napa and going to the small winery. You get to meet I can't remember what you call a winemaker. I guess a winemaker.
I'm pretty sure it's a winemaker, but
but you know what I mean.
What you call these?
It's fun watching them stumble. That's the best part.
Yeah. But anyhow,
Yeah, I remember back in 2013, 2014, they'd still buy you lunch. Now it's
well, that's
Yeah,
the thing.
a lot
Is
of
you
them
think
that get you out of
about
there.
the barrel picks you're doing in 2012, 2013, as opposed to what we do today from the major brand. I mean, I know Eddie's very well known at Wild Turkey for kind of taking people around the rick house with a drill, but I don't know if that still happens. But some of these small guys go in and say, hey, we're going to take a whole barrel, and we've got a group that has a decent social media following. We're going to post about it. That's big for them. That's a big win. So they're more than happy to take care of you and make sure you get the barrel you want. And that's what I think a lot of us probably miss and really enjoy that part of it. So I think there's always room for that.
yeah, I mean, hell, New Riff built they create a craze over single barrel picks. That was like brilliant. Like, how can we, as bigger distilleries are limiting barrel picks, we're going to ramp up ours to, get consumers. It was brilliant.
They do a good job, and I think that goes back to Blake's point. So smaller brands will still connect, and they'll spend the time, right? And I think that's probably what big brands got a little sick of back in 2012, 2013. All right, let's roll out some more barrels. All of a sudden, a barrel pick has taken 2, 3, 4 hours. They're getting sick of that. They can't keep that up, right? Smaller brands, they'll still do that. Like, all right, you want to come in, you want to taste it over and over again? That's fine. You're the only one here today to taste it. We don't have a factory of, 6 other people behind you coming in and say to do barrel picks. And people appreciate that. And those are special moments. You remember those, right? Oh yeah, I hung out with the master distiller, master blender, whoever it is, the owner of the company. We spent 4 hours just drinking, tasting different stuff. It was great. And that's still special in that book.
Yeah, that's still the experience you go for.
Yeah, so there's 2 things I want to bring up here. First is give a shout out to Brian in the chat, and I kind of feel the same exact way too. Is to say, there's no problem with MGP. It's great whiskey, but do something better than just bottle it. I think that we've seen some other companies come around that, you take Broken Barrel, for instance, you take Savage and Cook, they are using MGP whiskey, but they're finishing it. They're taking a different route with it. Penelope is doing bespoke blends with it. But there are other people that are doing nothing other than just bottling it barrel proof and putting it out there as some crazy unicorn cask. And I want to also give credit to Matt here with this, Matt Cusick, saying that, the issue that he has is when they price gouge you for, MGP or Dickel juice. And we've seen this already. I'm not going to name names for some of these brands, but you see 5-year-old MGP, they're charging $70, $80, $90, $100 a bottle. You've got some other ones that are 7-year, 8-year MGP, and it's $175 a bottle just because it's cask strength. I don't get it, and I don't know how sustainable something like that is, and whether that you're able to, I don't want to say dupe the consumers, but you definitely have kind of elevated yourself to a level that maybe you are trying to get to the people that aren't the vast whiskey know-it-alls, but people that think it's something special. I don't know. Like I'm still kind of having this sort of internal debate about that.
I'm not saying it's you're spot on, Connie. I'm not saying it's right because it's definitely not the right thing. But the amount of emails we get on a weekly basis of people saying, "Hey, so so-and-so in my life just hit this special milestone. I want to find a bottle that costs $200 to $300, $150 to $200, $400 plus. What can I buy? Right. So if you're a brand and you hear people doing this and you're like, you know what, there's not too many bourbons that they can easily find for $175, $200. Let's put it out there. People still don't know. The vast majority of people just associate quality with price. And again, that's not the right thing by no means. And I think everyone knows that who's listening to this podcast. But the majority of people who are buying don't know that. And it's just, so they're just trying to fill a hole in the marketplace that exists. And not saying it's the right thing to do, but it's probably why they're doing it.
I agree totally, Jordan. I mean, that's a price point that people want to pay, and if they don't know what they're getting, it's there. It's easy pickings and easy selling for someone who buys those barrels and just dumps them in. It's
the fun part too, because if we were all just going off of the best thing to drink for the price, we'd probably all be drinking, Wild Turkey 101 at least 5 nights a week. But none of us are doing that. So we're all kind of chasing a little bit of something different too. There's no doubt about it. You pull $100 out of your wallet to buy a bottle, you don't want to be wrong, because that's saying that you wasted $100. So it's got to be really bad for you to admit that, yeah, that was terrible. Most of the time, if you spend the money on it, you're like, yeah, it was good. I like it. I enjoyed it. And then that just perpetuates itself. So I don't know, but that's kind of what I love about the bourbon world. And that's every industry too. So
that price point, the 75 to 150, it is a sweet spot, right? It's like when people, and this is the psychology behind it, when people go into a restaurant and buy a bottle of wine. I don't want to buy the cheapest bottle because I don't want to do that. I don't want to buy the most expensive. So I'll just go straight for the middle. And the middle in bourbon has become like 75 to 150 now, right? It's crept up there. So they're like, oh, okay, I feel good. I'm probably getting something good.
I'm the dumbass that just did this the other night. I was like, that bottle's too cheap. That one's too high. I'm going to go for 60 at the restaurant,
That's right.
And I was like, I feel somewhat like a connoisseur now, at 60.
You didn't buy the cheapest one. You went right down the middle.
That's right. I didn't go with Mayomi. I didn't go with Camus, but I went with like a Silver Oak or something, or not Silver Oak, Sequoia Grove or something. I don't know, one of those.
There's a different podcast for Wine Pursuit. We're gonna get you. We're gonna get you
but
on that one.
It's all relative.
But the other question I want to throw you guys as well is that we already know that there is an influx of brands on the market, and this is just the tip of the iceberg to let people know. I think we're going to see a ton of brands come out here in the next 5 to 10 years as more barrels start coming online. As we all know, there's a huge surge in distillation, and everybody's adding on and doing more barrels every single day. But we're going to continue to start seeing more brands that are just based on MGP. And whether it's 3-year-old MGP, 4-year, 5-year, I doubt you're getting more than 5-year in most of these. For me, it's hard to stay excited about seeing these new brands come out. Again, I'm not going to name the names, but we get, like everybody else, we get some sort of bottles that are media bottles. They have some sort of push after it. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, let me see the story, whatever. And you read the back and it's 3 to 5 years old, distilled in Indiana. And you're like, well, I don't care. I quit caring. I don't care if you're using 36%, 20%. It's hard to start finding that connection with these brands because they're either hiding behind some big PR firm or and I have to give a shout out to Rare Bird. He says nobody's saying Ross and Squibb. Nobody's saying Ross and Squibb yet. Yeah, so the Ross and Squibb Distillery, not so much MGP. But I don't know. I mean, for you all, is it hard to stay excited for brands that are just pumping out another MGP product, or is it something you're just like, hey, I'll give it a shot? Maybe it's a different proof point. It's 89 versus 92 proof. It's a completely different product.
It's hard for me to be excited for Ross and Squibb.
Just the name alone
just
turns
the name
you off there. Well,
I think we go into everything with an open mind, right? And don't judge a book by its cover. But 9 times out of 10, the book ends up being the same exact story that you read over and over and over again, for lack of a better analogy. So it's not that we're not excited and we're not trying to guess the outcome, but you can pretty much know what's going to take place.
Yeah, and I wrote off all these MGP brands like when they were 10 to 13 years, and I guess I shouldn't write them off when they're 5 to 6. So
that was a mistake. It was all a mistake, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I'm not gonna. I can't wait till these 5 to 6 brands hold some back, get it to 10 to 13 again, because that's some of the better whiskey I've had in my day. It's really good. Maybe that's the positive in all this, Kenny. we will see 10 to 13 year MGP again soon.
At some point. And I give a shout out to Drew over here saying that, he's saying that he's tired of young MGP. He's bored with it. However, that's making him turn himself onto other smaller distilleries out there that are putting out more of a craft product. And I kind of, Blake, I'll kind of throw this one to you, is that, you have a market where you capitalize, or you try to look at, putting a marketing spin on, hey, this is craft whiskey. Like, I'm trying to show you something different. How often do you get brands that say, hey, I'd love to be able to sell on your site? And then you say, well, tell me more about it. And they say, oh, it's sourced from MGP. Do you say, I'm kind of capped at my MGP players now? Or do you say, all right, well, let's give it a go? What's your take on it from a retail perspective?
Yeah, so I feel like we're a little bit different because we're not just always about what's going to sell. But yeah, I mean, we've definitely hit a cap at times where it's just like, especially on private barrels, where it'll be like, hey, we've got 5 private barrels out right now that are all sourced MGP. Let's bring it back in. And the funny thing is somebody actually said that to me one time. They're like, hey, the last 3 emails have been all MGP. I'm like, well, no, actually, if you look back, we've had all these other craft distilled products. Did you buy that one? It's like, well, no, I didn't buy those. Just let me know when Smoke Wagon comes back in. And
that's gonna be the worst feeling ever.
Like,
that's your call of, do you have any Blantons in the back?
Yeah, but that's kind of where I feel fine about it, that we have more of the MGP stuff rolling in, because we're always transparent about it. We make sure that the brand is transparent about where they're sourcing from. But to me, you got to do something different with it, whether it's a finishing barrel or it's just an interesting barrel to start with. There has to be something unique about it. Otherwise, I mean, there's some craft distilleries doing incredible stuff right now. So I hate when people just automatically go for what they know when there could be something else out there. But that's just kind of the nature of consumers and everything else. So it's something that's always going to be there, and you just continue to let people grow in their knowledge and taste preferences, and they'll get there eventually. So
MGP, I just had a revelation. MGP is the chain restaurant of bourbon. Everybody feels comfortable with it.
I like it.
And, it's safe,
it's
and they
Starbucks.
know it's going to be good.
Are you going to go to some random coffee shop on the corner of a new city that you're in, or are you going to walk into a Starbucks and get what you know? But
I'm sorry, I mean Ross and Squibb is the chain restaurant. It's the new franchise out there.
Remember, Ross and Squibb is only for their products like Remus and all that sort of stuff. So that MGP is still alive. I know. Maybe, is it just because everybody just likes to say the word Squibb? Squibb Games. We'll just
Who likes it? No one
just
likes
rolls right off the tongue.
It really does. It really does.
Yeah, I'll be interested when it comes Luxro MGP Kentucky sourced stuff. So if that ever happens,
that'll happen.
Something will happen. Who knows? Like I said, everybody's going to go home. We're going to make a vision board, and we're going to see what comes to fruition, and that's what's going to happen. But let's go ahead. We'll start rounding this one out. Guys, I think we had a lot of good takes tonight, especially looking at Stagg and where it all went, or where it's going to be here in the next 3 years, 4 years. I don't know. I tell you what, if we see a 18, 19, 20-year-old new product, we know exactly where those couple hundred barrels went, and we'll be able to look on this day and say, I felt like we were right there.
We were the only ones that knew
something. We knew something. We didn't know what we knew, but we knew something.
They were saying we're conspiracy theorists, and it all came to fruition.
Sometimes it's right. And I'm really glad that Ryan was able to put MGP in the same sort of boat as Applebee's over here. So it's even better.
That's right.
Well, we just got to figure out who's the bloomin' onion of the bourbon world, and we'll take it from there.
That's Barton.
Even better. All right, so let's go ahead. We'll start wrapping it up. Jordan, I'll let you go first.
Sure. This is Jordan, one of the 3 guys from Breaking Bourbon, breakingbourbon.com. All your bourbon whiskey review needs.
For sure. And Brian.
All right, Brian with Sippin' Corn and bourbonjustice.com. Find me on all the socials there. Thanks again. Good show, guys.
For sure. And Blake, coming to you from PF Chang's in I
Orlando.
think Orlando, yes.
Yeah, I feel like I've pulled off, like, we've had the Pappy heist. This was the Pursuit heist. Kenny was so against me being on this episode tonight, and then he was like, "Oh, I don't know. The Disney Wi-Fi is a little better than I thought it was, and probably better than my own house." So, but no, guys, always fun to be back. It's been too long. I think it's been 2 months, although we're recording twice this week, so that'll be fun. But Blake from Bourboner and Sealbox, and yeah, always fun. Thanks again for having me.
For sure. Well, that's it, everybody. Thank you once again for tuning in to this Bourbon Community Roundtable. And of course, we'll be back here again. And make sure you follow Bourbon Pursuit wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, Pandora. Make sure you follow all these guys. Also, make sure you follow Bourbon Pursuit on every single social. With that, cheers, everybody. We'll see you all next week.
Cheers.
Cheers.